If you are tired of blaming others for everything that goes wrong in your life, it might be time to look in the mirror. It is a very common defense mechanism for individuals to constantly blame their environment, family, past, bad luck, or social relationships for the chronic problems, failures, or unhappiness they face throughout their lives. In psychology, this is a reflection of what is called an external locus of control, an effort to place the ego in a temporary protective circle by constantly attributing responsibility and control to external factors. However, more often than not, at the root of a person's great losses, repeated misfortunes, and never-ending disappointments lie their own destructive attitudes and internalized sense of worthlessness, adopted unconsciously. The ruthless attitude and chronic lack of self-esteem an individual displays toward themselves make it impossible to draw healthy psychological boundaries. This, in turn, creates a vulnerable foundation open to exploitation, manipulation, and systematic harm by others because the individual cannot protect their own boundaries. The way to break free from this destructive cycle is to stop wasting energy trying to change the outside world or transform others according to one's expectations, and instead become aware of these internal dynamics and self-sabotage mechanisms. Because awareness constitutes the most critical, challenging, and transformative first step on the path to a solution. The core psychological and behavioral characteristics exhibited by individuals who harbor deep anger or feelings of worthlessness toward themselves can be elaborated under the following headings with cause and effect relationships and concrete life scenarios. Under the scope of lack of cognitive flexibility and focus, individuals who fall into the black or white trap hate themselves or have lost their self-worth generally have a rigid thinking tendency that operates at extremes, expressed as black and white or all or nothing. This cognitive distortion stems from the brain's need to simplify everything by dividing it into two opposite poles to avoid the anxiety created by uncertainty, rather than analyzing events in all their complexity. As the psychological price of living at extremes, life for these individuals is either an absolute success or an irreversible, shameful failure. There is no transition zone, no concept of good enough, or learning process in between. For example, a professional who has worked on a project for weeks might decide that the entire presentation was a disaster, and that they are a useless, untalented failure just because they mispronounced a single number during the presentation. Meanwhile, the audience was very impressed by 99% of it. When the absence of gray areas and process orientation is examined, there is no room for the gray areas between success and failure, for human margins of error, or for the natural challenges in the flow of life. For these individuals, life is a game of results. However, real growth is hidden in the trial and error processes, the stumbles, and the getting back up within those gray areas. Rejecting the gray areas is to sabotage one's own journey of development. In cases of tunnel vision and hyperfocus on the negative, when a negative event occurs, all mental energy and attention are concentrated solely on this event, as if the rest of the world has ceased to exist. A friend's delayed reply to a message is sufficient evidence for the person to think, "Nobody loves me." Due to the generalization trap way, a single specific mistake is transformed into a massive, overarching, and pessimistic worldview, such as nothing has ever gone right in my life, I am always the loser, or I will never be happy. This generalization systematically withers the person's hope for the future. Regarding the loss of broad perspective and the perceptual veil, when looking from a broader perspective, a bird's eye view, it is logically impossible for every moment and every area of life to be completely bad. However, focusing only on the negative functions as a thick perceptual veil that prevents the individual from seeing their existing talents. With low self-esteem and approval dependency, at the point of becoming a slave to the outside world, individuals who feel deeply worthless, defective, or inherently flawed begin to measure their own value based on the momentary reactions, approval, or appreciation of others to fill this internal void and sense of meaninglessness. The state of the weak external approval mechanism and vulnerability creates a necessity for the person to link the quality of their work, their intelligence, or their physical appearance to constant external validation rather than their own internal standards. If those around them have not praised them that day, the person feels invisible and worthless. The sense of value is like an external fuel, and the moment it runs out, the person collapses. During the rejection of compliments and doubt filtering stage, the person filters even sincere compliments, as it can't be real. They think these are said only out of politeness, because the other party has an ulterior motive, or because they pity them. They reject any positive information that does not fit the I am bad template in their mind. Due to the ye explanation trap, even when they achieve a significant success, they tend to downplay it by attributing it to luck, coincidence, or the help of others instead of their own talent or effort, saying, "I was just in the right place at the right time. I didn't actually do anything," is a standard for these individuals. When social chameleonism and loss of authenticity occur, because they see their own essence as inadequate and boring, they try to wear artificial masks that they think will be accepted and loved in that group, rather than acting as they are in social settings. They become a social chameleon, constantly trying to adapt to the expectations of others. As a paradoxical result of artificiality, this excessive effort to adapt and please everyone causes the person's unique character, color, and charisma to vanish. Consequently, ironically, the very thing they fear most, being seen as boring, faded, or characterless, happens precisely because of this artificial effort. People feel the void beneath the person's mask and distance themselves. When the two sides of internal destruction are addressed under the heading of depersonalizing criticism and envy, for an individual with low self-esteem, criticism is not feedback regarding a behavior that needs improvement or a technical deficiency. It is an executive order of an annihilation attack directed at their very existence and essence. In the case of hypersensitivity and the glass house syndrome, even the smallest, most constructive, and well-intentioned criticisms can be perceived as all efforts going to waste or a total humiliation of the person's character. The person takes this criticism, magnifies it in their mind, and links it to the conclusion that I can't do anything right anyway. In the context of emotional reactivity, within the balance of gymplosion and explosion, they either blow the criticism out of proportion and retreat into deep silence, experiencing internal destruction and a depressive mood, or they show a disproportionate, defensive outburst of anger to protect themselves. Both reactions prevent the solution. Regarding dysfunctional envy and the hell of comparison, the intense feeling of envy is actually the manifestation of a deep internal restlessness arising from the person's inability to realize their own potential and their lack of self-confidence. The success of others is perceived as a threat because it serves as a painful mirror, reminding these individuals of their own failures, deficiencies, and what they couldn't do. A lifetime passes being angry at why the neighbor's garden is so green, instead of watering one's own garden. When one fear of intimacy and inability to dream are examined as a way of imprisoning oneself, individuals who hate themselves or find themselves fundamentally flawed, ironically, tend to avoid healthy relationships and meaningful goals, which are their greatest needs in life. Due to the fear of being exposed and the mask falling, the person consciously or unconsciously avoids forming deep and sincere bonds with others. Because according to their belief, if someone truly gets close to them, they will see how flawed, inadequate, or worthless they actually are and abandon them. To avoid experiencing this pain of abandonment, they do not let anyone into their heart. They remain always on the surface, safe but alone. At the point of being trapped in the comfort zone and wounded dreams, they completely give up on dreaming big or taking risks to protect themselves from the possibility of failure and the massive pain that a potential disappointment would create. The thought it won't happen anyway, I shouldn't tire myself for nothing, becomes a life philosophy. When the internal sabotage and the voice of the boss are heard, an internal voice constantly belittles their capacity and drags down their potential. This voice condemns the person to live in a limited, colorless area that avoids risk and seems safe, but is actually rotting from within. The person falls into the position of a spectator in their own life. Within the scope of your ruthlessness toward mistakes, at the state of I being one's own executioner, these individuals withhold the compassion, tolerance, and the kindness of being able to say it's okay that they show to people outside, their friends, and even strangers, from the person who needs it most, themselves. Within the framework of albeit catastrophizing scenarios, a small slip of the tongue, a clumsy act, or a simple misunderstanding in a social setting turns into a catastrophe scenario for the person. A grand story of being disgraced that they replay in their mind for days, whereas other people in the environment have likely long forgotten that mistake. When their mistakes are seen as inability to forgive and a whip, instead of seeing their own mistakes as opportunities for growth and experiences, they use them as whips to beat, humiliate, and punish themselves. This constant state of self-punishment erodes the person's life energy, creativity, and psychological resilience more and more each day. When the actionable steps for change and practical suggestions are evaluated, realizing these destructive traits is not enough on its own. One must put this awareness into action. Here are some strategies to create lasting and meaningful change in life. First, I keep a thought recording. Catch the moments when you are thinking in black and white. When you say, I can never do it, create gray areas by asking, which parts can I do right now? And which parts do I need to learn? Second, perform self-compassion exercises. Stop at a moment when you are being too hard on yourself and think, if my best friend had made this mistake I'm experiencing now, with what words would I approach them? Would I say to them, you're an idiot? Or would I say, it's okay? This can happen to all of us. How can we fix it? Start treating yourself the way you would treat that friend. Third, we take small risks. If you are afraid of dreaming big, take small and safe risks first. Make a request that has the possibility of being rejected but whose result will not darken your life. This will increase your immunity to the answer, no. Fourth, keep a compliment journal. Note down the nice things said to you, even if they are small. When your mind tries to reject them, open and read that list, and leave the door open to the possibility that maybe it really is this way. Fifth, an internal approval mechanism instead of external approval. When you finish a task, ask yourself before asking anyone else, am I satisfied with this work? How did this work turn out according to my standards? Learn to be your own judge. In conclusion, working on these deep wounds and mental patterns with patience, compassion, and small but determined steps is the only real way to take control of your life back into your own hands from external factors. Valuing oneself is not a destination, but a journey that must be chosen anew every day. As an actionable first step, one can ask themselves this question. If my best friend made the same mistake, would I use words as harsh as the ones I say to myself? If this video shed some light for you, don't forget to like it and share your own journey of awareness in the comments.